So we'll move the conversation along. I want to focus a little bit on your experience in animation because you have also an interesting route here, in that there's
I have zero training,
but
no schooling.
But baked into your work are kind of these two sides, and it's something that I identified with in your work really early on. Is that I'm a guy who came from like action style comics, but early on also found this kind of like there's a cartoon, an indie cartoon thing that resonates for me, and I found it all in your work. That you had this stuff that was really this like weird old cartoony shit.
And then still modern feeling.
Yeah. So when I will admit that when I heard that they were making Jetcat, I was pissed as fuck. Because I felt like that was like I wanted to be the guy who came to you and made that, and because Jetcat is one of those things for me. I thought it was perfect,
very animatable.
It's perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that would have been the first thing that you had animated.
Second thing, I did a short bit for a YTV show called Squawk Box in like '91.
She's
nodding. Oh, really? For real? Are you kidding? So I did this. I wrote this thing called Wonder Duds, stupid superhero. It's a silly little thing from it's on IMDb there somewhere. And then Jetcat would have been the second one.
So how did that happen?
So that one happened. So the thing is, so I started doing print comics and winging it right out of art school just for kicks. And literally the first few we put out, I think we were just kidding. We were just doing it. And then people started to write.
Yeah.
So we got fan mail, and I realized it wasn't just me, but anyone we were just like, well, we have to get a lot better at this.
How many copies of those first books were you printing?
A couple thousand.
Yeah.
Most of which got flooded in the basement of the place that it would, I don't know how many exist, but it was small.
Yeah.
But distribution was still good, and the indie boom was happening in like 1991. So people in Albuquerque, New Mexico, were interested in buying like underground Canadian comics.
Yeah.
So we got
so bizarre.
So we made headroads. It was really weird.
Well, I mean, like Caliber was thriving, and all these other. Yeah.
And then I would recommend this to any struggling animator, artist of any kind, anyone that has any ambition. I mean, comics really, when you boil it down, is the most cost-effective way to get your own story into a bunch of hands. I mean, it's still a wonderful way.
Web comics now, because you don't even have to print them. And distribution is, the bar is free to.
Yeah. So just if you're pitching, just do it. Make the work. And so that's what happened. Is it floated out there as this like floating portfolio, and I got a cold call from this guy John May that was doing this thing at YTV to say, your stuff's hilarious. We're doing this stupid show. Do you want to be a writer? And I was like, sure. And then Jetcat was the same thing. I was at a convention, and Fred Schaefer, the best animated producer that ever lived. Sorry, everybody else, but we're 3 for 3. 3 for 3. He goes, I like Jetcat. We get it made. He goes, I like TUTENSTEIN. We get it made. I show him Secret Saturdays. He's like, we're gonna get this made. So he's just awesome to work with. But he was the guy that saw Oddville, the original strip, and went, there is something here.
Yeah.
So my first 2 animated projects were adaptations. They were licensed, so they were literally based on something that was already in print. And then after the success of TUTENSTEIN, I wanted to try to make something tailored for animation. So Secret Saturdays was a different project, and it's owned by Cartoon Network. It was created for them, tailored to them, and looked nothing like that when I brought it to them. That was a long process of And it had been at WB in development hell for a while first. WB Kids had it for a while, and it was called Cryptids, and it was a totally different show. It started as a comedy, like a younger skewed, I
remember you posting Cryptid stuff.
It was like the monsters were the stars, and they were like cutesy, actually. The original pitch. Cartoon Network passed. We showed it to Nickelodeon. We showed it to, that's again. We talked about this is a long. Hard road. TUTENSTEIN took 7 years from initial pitch to on air, and Secret Saturdays was quicker, 5 years. So that's 12 years of my life.
Right.
2 shows. I'm very proud of both of my babies, but holy shit.
Sure.
So how do you feel?
How many comics could I have written and drawn in that time? Yeah.
That's what I always think.
Yeah.
So Wayward, my image book, has been optioned for animation.
That's the way to do it.
But what's happened is there's a Manga Entertainment, the guys in the UK that distribute a lot of the anime, they're partnering with a Japanese studio to put it together.
Very cool.
Which is great because it's all set in Japan and it's got this anime vibe
Yeah, it makes
to
sense.
it.
It really makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
But we're just, getting rolling. So like they've asked me to put together the story Bible, which I just finished.
Yep.
And the good thing is I've got all that material to draw from the comics. And Steven and the artist on the series has done a bunch of design sheets, and they're securing financing. We're just at this front end of this thing, but because it's been announced, the option got announced. We're just getting this deluge of people saying, "So when's it coming out?" Like it's going to be out for Christmas. Or
Right.
something,
Of course.
And I'm trying to be as honest as possible and just be like, I don't know, not as soon as you or I would like, if at all. Like it could still fall through.
Yeah.
It's
It
an
could,
option, right? So
but it won't. It's
But-
going to be great.
I'm super excited. I'm pumped, but it's that weird feeling of trying not to focus all my attention on that. First of all, I'm not going to be, I'm involved, but I'm not on the ground every single, element of it. And I want to keep making the book. That's the source material anyway.
Which is
right?
that's way
And
more
that's your
important.
job.
And
That's my job.
you got to nail the source material so that they have something to work with.
And that was what was weird about finally getting an agent to start repping me for media stuff. I felt really good about publishing stuff in the comic industry and conventions and all the stuff I'd learned at Udon or learned on the web or learned through my own experiences. But the media stuff I felt completely out. I didn't have any handle on. I knew animation production, but I didn't understand producers and
Deals.
pitching and getting deals.
Nobody
and
does.
I felt like I was just going to get screwed no matter
Same
what I
thing,
did.
right.
And the other thing I felt like was, and what I'd heard horror stories about was these comic artists who would get a movie thing maybe happening, and they would do meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And every time a Hollywood person is having a meeting, they're doing their job and they get paid their salary.
Yeah.
And you as a creator, when you're doing meetings, you're not getting paid. You don't get a salary.
Yeah.
And so there's
I
that
have
weird,
noticed that.
Yeah.
So, you'd see these guys where they would be like, oh, we're on the upswing for this big, media thing.
Yeah.
And then they would stop making their comic. And you're like, that's the thing you need to really stay on top
That's
of.
when you double down on your comic.
Yeah, because...
First of all,
there's
keeps you
a-
grounded.
Well, and if the thing does happen, those trade paperbacks, those books are going to sell like crazy.
Yeah, that's
the
your
more
money.
you have out. Yeah.
There's a reason that there are a Simpsons magazine in comics and SpongeBob magazine in comics. The creators are probably doing pretty okay from the shows.
Yeah,
But comics and magazines are cheap to produce.
sure.
It cranks out a ton of material. People get it in their hands. It keeps the fandom going. Probably long after the show will be done.
That's what we did with
So
Samurai Jack.
Right. So it's exactly. There's a reason
Yeah.
that those empires have that print option.
Yeah.
It's an amazing way to keep telling those stories and to keep the material in front of people and to keep it fresh too. Like SpongeBob's got a great roster of different artists that have been working on it. Like
Well, that's
really weird.
so-
Like Jim Woodring did one.
That's what's
recently.
interesting
amazing.
about some of this
Yeah.
more latest wave. Like it was always interesting. So you worked for Owl.
Right, still do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really interesting to discover at some point that a lot of my favorite comics people were doing this
Dave
work for
Cooper,
Owl.
yeah.
Yeah, and it was like
Same time.
Including some art director knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And there seems to be that, and so it's that. Then you go and you look around, and all of a sudden, like what was the Muppets book that British guy?
Oh, crap, it's right on the tip of my tongue. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Brian
I'm
Tillman?
going to kick myself that I don't remember it.
Muppets book. Oh, he's not British. He's Australian.
Is he Australian?
Yeah. It's.
He used to do stuff in Deadline. That's why I think.
Yeah. It's.
Why can't I remember his name? It's going to drive me crazy.
Ralph Emerson.
No.
No.
I'm going to go to the internet. It's going to
Yeah, I
happen.
know, it's gonna,
Damn.
you figure it out. I'll keep moving forward.
Yeah,
but there was
that
but all of a
irritates me.
sudden it's like these books, these kids books,
Yeah.
that have really interesting creators working on them, and so somewhere in the mix, someone's recognizing that if you bring these interesting comics creators into these books and you give them a little bit of room, you're going to get really cool kids comics that would otherwise be overlooked.
Roger Langridge.
Roger
Yes.
Langridge. Yes.
Yes.
He's phenomenal. Yep.
Yeah, fantastic.
He's.
Thank you, sir.
I don't
No
think he's
problem.
British.
Hey, the internet
So
did it. I
I-
know nothing.
The fear, of course, is that you get so much success you don't get to draw anymore, and that's the last thing I want out of life. Like if I'm if I'm,
See, I'm totally cool with that.
it's
already out of
fine,
that
and I
world,
don't
too.
care. You know, that's cool. Everyone, you know, there's lots of plumbers who are happy
Hang
never
on,
to
you
draw.
mean you don't get a chance to, or you don't want to? You're not motivated to anymore.
I don't know which
comes
is
first?
how that
I just want
fallout
to tell
happens.
stories. I want to work with great people, and I want to tell stories.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
the
always been my
satisfaction I
jam.
get from actually drawing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I would miss it so much, and if I somehow succeeded myself out of it,
Right.
I think I would have made a mistake.
That's a
Yeah, but
healthy,
look
that's
at
a
look
healthy
at
fear. No,
some
that's
of the
good.
biggest people in the industry. Whether like Jim Lee still draws.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah,
a
of course.
publisher at DC.
I don't think it's I mean, I'm giving myself lofty
Sure, whatever.
ambitions,
But
See,
but
okay, but like I moved into producing and management because I was having the same issues with working as a drawer in animation that you did.
Yeah.
And a path opened up for me that was this.
sure.
Because I couldn't do that for a living. My burnout was really high. My first couple years in Vancouver, like really it killed me. And so I was looking for that other, and I never had a path to comics. Ottawa, it was happening here in Toronto. I didn't even know it. You know,
Montreal had a good
I
scene
got dragged
too.
along into it.
but it was
But
there.
it
It was
yeah.
there somewhere. You had a connection to it
Yeah.
in some respect, and that's something that I've. So I look at your work, and I see a lot of choices in it that are choices that the fantasy version of me also makes.
Right.
So I have some vicarious thrill watching your work.
the fantasy version of you is also like ripped like Conan and stuff.
I
too.
do love
And
to
his hair down
I
to
do
here.
love to see
Yeah,
your
there you
work,
go.
Scott.
It's,
No,
the fantasy
because,
version of me at this point is
because
growing old
I
like
know
Jeff
you've
Bridges.
always been a little
So,
quieter.
Yeah, maybe not ripped
Yeah.
anymore.
It's okay.
And you were certainly 10 years ago when I first met you, whatever. You definitely were acting more like a student. You know, you were a student to the scene. So when I see your work now, I'm always like, yeah,
I was like the.
check it out.
I had started at a studio that was full of successful people.
Right.
Which is the best place to be
Oh,
if you're
you always want
joining
to
a
be
group.
that
Surrounded by
hungry
people
man,
better than you.
hungry.
Yeah.
You're always learning from people.
Yeah.
But
You know,
people-
right now I'm working on a comic thing, and I'm collaborating with some of the biggest writers at Marvel, and seeing their stuff and hearing from them. And I went down for one of the writing summits. Man, I'm like the kid at the table, you know, and we're all jamming ideas and just learning from that process.
Yeah.
I feel simultaneously, you know, terrified, but also so thrilled to have that experience because I'm getting to keep learning. I'm getting to keep growing. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
always will.
Yeah.
You always keep learning.
I feel like
If you don't think you need to learn, then
No.
yeah,
you're
And you've just
dead.
hit it.
then what are you even
Yeah.
doing? I feel like
Yeah.
guys like Rossi and Jay seem like they didn't need any. Like I can't picture you two needing a portfolio review from somebody because you're so self-motivated that you produce so quickly.
It wouldn't have made any difference
yeah,
one way or the other.
you're
Oh, you're gonna
still-
tell me I suck? Whatever.
You're moving forward so quickly. It
like,
almost
I
doesn't
know,
matter
I
what the
guess.
person said to you.
Well, I mean, I hired Rosie.
yeah, exactly.
I hired Rosie based on her book and her Instagram,
Yeah.
Sure.
and because I knew her.
and
I'd met her
somehow
by
she
that time.
drew the book without anyone telling
Yeah.
her to,
Sure.
which is insane.
Yeah.
But
Because you had to, though.
But I feel like that was
she
my,
moved
You're
from
not trying to
another
prove
country,
something.
Yeah.
You just did
Oh, I know.
'cause you
joined
had
our
to.
studio.
You guys are making me blush. Jeez.
Yeah, see,
Dropping them fucking
I
water
never,
here.
I never had that.
Yeah, I never felt like that with art. I feel a bit like that with writing. Like
Yeah.
I write stories like a crazy person. I have to keep doing it, and people respond to them and have offered me more writing gigs because clearly that's where my passion is and also what people have responded to.
But it wasn't necessarily always that obvious. That's what I love
No.
about that story is that you used to draw too, and you used to do
Yeah,
a lot of
and
things.
I still draw, but yeah.
And the storytelling was always part of it. But now you've really gotten to that point in
Yeah.
your life and in your career where you're like, no, I'm good at this.
I
This
like
is,
it. This
This
is where I want
working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
put my,
Yeah.
and the teaching. I love teaching as well. That is, I think, growing up with a teacher, but also that natural inclination to want to be able to codify what I know and be able to impart it to other people, or to learn and particularly the basics, master them and then bring them to people.
Yeah.
Perspective drawing, I do because I started as a layout artist, background artist. Teaching that to people, teaching them about good composition or opening up their minds to animation history and storytelling means so much to me.
Yeah.
And when I see these students responding, and a lot of my stuff is sort of reactive in the sense of the areas where I felt like I was not taught well, I particularly want to hunker down and be like, no, you're going to know how to get a good job. You're going to understand the importance of these elements. Those fears that you have, I have had, and I want you to be aware that you're going to overcome them. in a way that I wish someone had told me, shook me and told me.
And credit where it's
I
due.
want
The
to cut in.
Yeah,
Oh,
please.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
a karate chop in here. You were saying like how I came here and everything, but when I came to the raid, it was such an inspiration because at school I got shot on all the time. And then when I came here, like I still see you as kind of like, I called you like the guru internally. Because I would, the guru.
Oh, the guru. I think you said
That's
the
just the
goon.
accent.
I was like, the goon. Like he was just like a bully. who just walked
Strangely,
up.
both kind of
That's not the compliment I wanted to give, the guru.
So is it
Tearing portfolios
Yes.
in half.
the goon.
Just like destroying everything. No, I would come over
apologies.
and Scott's like super chill. And he gave me insight into animation and comics and everything. But it was just so like inspiring. And when I came here, it was like Carrie and Willow were here. And I just got to meet such awesome people. But they gave me such positive input. Like it was like good criticism saying like, oh, do this and that. And I remember Ramon asking him like, how many pages would I need for a portfolio? He was saying, do 12 or 15 even. And it was just like all this insight that I never got before. And it was just enough.
It's a room full of people who are happy about comics rather
I know.
than trying
Right.
to stomp you down.
Exactly.
Well, and are used to being supportive of each other.
It was so positive though, but I think that it's like I was really keen to learn, and that comes down to character. Like people who can take criticism but just think, you're only giving me criticism so I can do better.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you
Yeah.
should really take it as that. People are like, you're just shitting on me. It's like, well, take that shit as a good thing because I want to let you know so you can proceed to do much better things.
Yeah, someone's taking
Or
the time
agree
to
or
share.
more and more.
disagree, but you still take it all in.
You have to take it all in. So I was really lucky from that, and that's what motivated me to do
Rossi was
much
so
more.
hardworking, independent of us anyway. It's kind of like that's the biggest X factor
Sure.
in anyone's career to actually just produce.
Yeah.
And you'll find a groove along the way. But the Raid Studio is like hacked the system of how to be a comic book artist.
Yeah.
Like we've kind of undone all of the shortcomings of being a solo creator who has to sort of work in private and like be a little isolated and all of the possible life and personality consequences of something
Sure.
like that. Raid Studio undoes that. And
feel like
then
Udon did that a little bit,
exponentially improves you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Udon
Yeah.
was like the incubator for that.
Yeah, I feel because so many of the people that came in the door didn't know stuff, but you just, it's like the first time you see original art and you go, oh, that's how thick the line work should be, or that's how much space I should leave.
Yeah,
for-
yeah.
just
Panels,
getting
gutters should be
those-
this way.
Yeah, being around other people where you can go, oh,
You
how
learn
did you
all the,
solve this
like-
problem?
You
Yeah,
draw
I
a paper in
I
this
don't-
size
I
and then
don't
scan it down. You're like,
recommend-
oh shit, I thought you had to draw tiny.
Right.
Even just like knowledge
I
like
don't
that,
recommend
that's
learning
so
by
common.
doing it.
Right.
It takes a lot longer.
Well, there's
but,
a
you know.
limit to, I try and tell people, okay, you can read tutorials, you can read how-to books, you can do all that stuff, but at some point you do need to make page 1, panel 1.
Yeah.
And you will fall on your face and you will make
Yeah.
mistakes.
First
I
3
have
pages
very
are
little to go
bitch to
on.
do.
Sure.
I find every time thumbnailing, reading a script,
Yeah.
trying to thumbnail during the first 3, I'm just like, wow, I want to shit myself. But then after and when once I'm on to page 4, I'm like, I've got it now.
So what drives you now, Ross?
What drives me now?
Yeah, what do you love about the process, or what are you into?
It's been interesting. After doing Spirit Release for so long, I'm really happy with the feedback of it, and I had my time to express myself, but I was in my comfort zone. So now I'm doing other projects with other people and writers, and it's it's pushing me, and I want to do better in environments. I just want to what we're doing, and some people in Bitch Plan and everything. It's just opening me to more, and I just hope I become a better draftsman and do the environments and character design. And it's exciting because I see myself getting better, and that's really exciting.
Yeah.
It's not starting to try and sound cocky. I have a long way to go, but it's exciting.
Sure.
And that's because everyone's like, just keep doing this, keep drawing traditionally, or just keep practicing, and I do. So I don't know what I'm going to produce in the next year or 10 years, but I hope it's fucking
Well, I
decent.
know one thing you're going to produce in the next year, so I'm
Yes.
quite happy with
Let's
that.
hope I
Nice.
don't fuck it up.
You brought up something interesting though. I think maybe one of the things that kept me driven was that I'm always dissatisfied.
Yeah.
I actually always think I could do better.
I find
About
there's
a week later, about a week, yeah.
I find there's a life cycle to it where
Yeah.
I'm happy something momentarily
overjoyed sometimes where you're like,
Maybe-
oh my
Yeah.
God, it works.
2 or 3 pages a book, they'll be
Yeah.
this one really turned out.
Yeah.
I got it just right.
Yeah.
And then a couple months goes by and I'll be unhappy with it again.
Yeah.
But then a couple of years go by, and
It's
I'll
like
be like,
someone else did it.
That's true,
I'll be
too.
like, that's
Yeah.
not bad. If I saw this somewhere else,
It's
you know what I
strange.
mean? I can still see why I was critical of it, but I'm
Yeah,
not
I'm like
as-
that with stories.
as harsh
I'll
on
read
it.
older stuff, and it's enough in the rearview mirror. Like I do remember writing it, but there's enough detachment from it where I read it and I kind of go, "Oh, that was
that works.
pretty sick."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not all of it, but just those little moments where I go, "Oh, that's why people like that."
It's funny,
I know it
right?
sounds
Right? No,
weird,
no,
right?
no,
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
There is an alienation that happens.
You just
separation from the
detach
material,
and you
for
can
sure.
analyze your own work like that, and
Yeah.
I think that's really good to improve yourself, and you just see what works and what doesn't work. It's
My
amazing. that you
mom
can do
went
that.
through that with me last year. the Christmas special.
How she
Oh,
started
really?
to like you and then got sick of you, but
No,
then
like-
came around again.
with something that I
Okay.
made. I mean, animation. There were how many hundreds of us working on it?
Sure, man. Yeah, I
Or
remember.
actually not hundreds on that one. It was a pretty small crew for something like that. So we made a Christmas special last year. Rossi was one of our designers on it, and I co-directed it and I produced it. Now as a director, I'm more of a pre-production guy. My co-director is more story and execution, but also wearing this producer hat. I got to really see how, like, I was in the thick of how the sausage was getting made behind the scenes. So I knew what in my mind we set out to make, and the thing at the end was not something I could watch.
Oh, really?
Right.
And it's the thing
It
I won an
happens.
award for,
Right, right.
and all this kind of stuff. And I was also feeling a little detached from it by the time it got to that point, because it was no like I was now fighting battles through most of it, while
that.
Matthias was the guy directing the show at
Yeah.
that point. But Matthias doesn't know at the time was not much of a pre-production guy, and so all that early stuff with
It
you
was
and Aaron.
so different than I thought it was going to be. Very different.
So my mother's first experience watching it was having heard me talk all this stuff about it.
Right.
So she was quite critical of it
Sure.
with me.
Right.
And then the following Christmas, she watched it again. She was like, it was actually pretty good.
It's
And she had that experience of just watching it on CBC. It came on, and she quite
Irregardless.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I did not watch it again. I have not watched it again. I don't know when I will.
So my agent, who now has moved away to Paris, or to south of France, Jean-Marc L'Officier, a great guy. He was was Steve Rude and Paul Pope's agent. That's how I met him, and he repped Mobius. That's how he came to the States in the first
Pretty good
place.
pedigree.
He's a pretty cool dude.
I've heard that
He
name.
told me once on one of my projects, he's part of that story of the Silver Snail signing with Mobius here in town. It's it's legendary that we talked about Mark Asquith earlier. But he said that before on one of my projects when it was sort of going south and there was a lot of other voices and it was just getting away from it. He just said, really, if it's like 50% as good as what you wanted, like that's going to be pretty amazing. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's a good attitude.
So that's
like,
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like,
But that-
yeah, you're
but that's the
probably right. He's
sad
like, It's still
thing.
going to be better than everybody else's
Nice.
show.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah.
So that's the sad thing about this animation medium, and this is what. So a similar story. A friend of mine was directing a show out on the East Coast, and he was struggling with it. They had a very very young crew. It was an action show being done in Flash that didn't really lend itself very well to it. And he kept thinking, like, if I had like just 3 of the guys I used to work with, we could do this. And he was freaking out, and it's like it's shit. And so he called up another friend of ours who was directing stuff. He was like, and he was saying that it's shit. And this friend, said to him, they're all shit.
yeah.
They're never as good as you.
They're
hope
all
they're
shit.
gonna
Yeah,
be.
this thing, you're never gonna get this thing up here. So you make the best piece of shit you can. And part of that is so defeating.
Yeah.
But part of it is also kind of liberating. Like once
It's
you
the
know
same,
that
it's the same learning curve that when you start comic books.
Oh
all your
yeah,
pages are
the
garbage.
idea up here is always perfect
scale's so
because
much
it doesn't
huger,
have
though.
any
Yeah.
holes in it
Yeah.
because you haven't made it manifest. Once I put that story up here, you're already signing copies and everyone loves it or whatever, right? You put that idea down in pitch form and you realize, oh God, it's just this horrific malformed Swiss cheese baby, and it's like, what have I done? It's full of holes and it's dying and right
I can't support it.
what have I done? And then you have to start plugging the holes and make this Frankenstein baby come to life. And when it's done, it's not any of the things that you thought it was going to be, but you brought it to life, man. You made it happen. And it's like the collaboration, the artist, and the publisher, and all those things. And there have been those projects that aren't what I hoped they would be. And you finish them, and it's like, ripping the Band-Aid off. Like, oh, God, that was terrible. That was awful. And you have to somehow get away from it and look at it again with fresh eyes. There have been projects where really, really hard ones to finish. And you get to the other side of it, and it's like a wound.
Yeah.
Like, you're just
I
man.
know that thing was good.
Yeah.
But I kind of don't care.
It's a good battle.
You know, like I'm not ready to watch it again.
Yeah, it is like a
and
battle
enjoy it
scar.
for what
You're
it
just
is.
like, yeah, I got this one when I was working on so and so.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Fucking wounded me, scarred me for life, bitch. I'm proud.
I want to ask you guys, Darwin Cook.
Yeah.
I want to ask you guys about Darwin Cook.
It's been a year and a week, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I never knew Darwin. I came to Toronto about 5 years ago, and he was one of those guys. Because I'm terrible at being a fan. Because when I met Mike Allred, that was
who is another one of the nicest guys in the world.
Yeah, like I met him.
He and Laura are like the coolest people.
Laura was so nice
kind
to me.
to
Laura
me.
was so nice to me.
Yeah.
And it was my first time going to San Diego, and I had some pages with me, and I was so nervous. And it was in like '94, and it was when he had Superman, Madman, Hullabaloo come.
Oh,
so he was over at the big kids table.
Yeah.
Right. He was really like that was his year.
Yeah.
And he was it. He was everything I ever wanted to do in comics. And even though
he helped. He was so kind. Quick aside, but Tragedy Strikes Press, where I first started back in the 91 with Nick Crane and Michelle Vrana in Guelph, Ontario. Mike was part of that. He was writing us letters, encouraging us. He was just starting too.
Yeah.
And he did press for us, and he was doing like graphic music at the time.
Yeah.
But he is just such a champion of good comics and like grassroots comics. He's a great guy.
So I go up to him as a fan, and it's one of these. It was one of my first experiences of just having nothing to say to the person I admired so much.
Oh, yeah.
And there was this guy next to me who was one of these fans who was like, in issue 22, in panel 3, a page, whatever, and I was like, I'm not with him. Yeah. You know, I'm cool
That's
like
not
you.
me.
And
We can hang out. This guy won't be there.
And I have
We'll
no
talk
way of
about it.
communicating this to you.
Yeah.
And I walked away, and he did a little sketch, and I have it framed. And I walked away so defeated, and I went back to see Laura, and I explained exactly how it had gone down, and she was like, "Oh, you poor boy." Yeah. It was like she was so nice because she was over at his table, but he was at the DC booth.
Can I please see this portfolio you brought him?
Oh, I don't know. Sure, I'll find something.
should.
I'll dig
You
something up
gotta
at some
do
point.
it.
I had a couple pages I had done that were just terrible, but I never showed them to anybody ever
Doc
again.
Allred
kind of thing.
reject thing.
So my attitude towards that became, if I'm good at what I do, then I will come across these people in my life because I've earned it.
Yeah.
I will come across these people because our lives will intersect, because I'm doing the work that will bring it together. And Darwin was one of those for me.
Yeah.
Darwin was one of those guys that I thought I would get a shot at someday in terms of doing something with him. If I was a good producer in animation, or if I was whatever it was.
Oh no, he's done with animation. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but because he lived in both worlds, it was just one thing where maybe, you know.
Yeah.
And then he was gone.
Yeah.
I know.
That was the strangest thing. So last summer when he passed away, I was on a sabbatical. My wife and I had gone to Japan for a research trip for Wayard, my image book, which takes place in Japan. And so I was waking up 13 hours, separate from North America and everything. So I'd wake up and the entire news cycle on the internet had gone, whatever had happened had been announced. People had freaked out about it.
Yeah.
People had made jokes about it. People had given each other shit for making jokes about it. And then someone had written a very thoughtful essay about the people that had written shitty jokes about the people that had written jokes about the thing that happened. All before I woke up on everything that was happening in politics, in the world. And the weirdest thing was waking up and there was that announcement that he had, that he was sick. And I read that and I was like, oh, this is utterly surreal. They wouldn't have posted this if he wasn't really bad. And then I slept again and then I woke up and he was gone. And I was just like
that was quick.
And I'm super detached from it all because I'm just seeing these articles and I'm seeing these posts. And it was literally between like getting ready to go to bed, oh, he's sick. Waking up, he's gone.
Right.
And I thought, I can't believe this. Like, it doesn't feel real. It just feels like
It was a bit, it was quiet he was actually sick for a while.
Oh, sure. But when it went public.
And it was very small for a while. Not because he was too proud or embarrassed or anything like that, but because the motherfucker thought he could beat it.
Right, right.
Of course, who would
Sure.
doubt him? I mean, we all thought maybe he would beat it. But,
Sure. But yeah, I was so removed from everything. It was this weird, surreal thing where I was reading, and the outpouring of emotion.
So he was a magazine guy. He was a photographer. He wrote for Music Man. He interviewed musicians for a long time, and he was a fashion photographer and a designer, magazine designer. And he'd always loved comics.
Which
and then
explains so much.
It totally does,
His
right?
books were the most beautiful
He's
books.
kind of the Warhol of the Toronto comic scene, in that somebody who was doing commercial work, and so he sees Bruce Timm's Batman the Animated Series. He sees it on. I don't know why he wasn't watching cartoon. I don't even know, but he sees it and he goes, and it reminds him of all the comics he loved when he was a kid. But he sees the elegance and the design, the ramped up delight of it, and he goes, "I'm going to do that now." And so he puts together a portfolio and sends it to Bruce in LA, and they hire him. So he starts doing some storyboarding, I think originally,
he was
from
a board
Toronto, and then ended up moving there. And of course, he was basically the driving force of Batman Beyond. And as he met those guys, as he started to get better at that work, he said, so he's a designer who gets into animation because that looks sexy. And then he meets all the animators, and all they talk about is comics.
Yeah.
All day long, all the guys he thinks are great are like, "I wish I was drawing comics." And he goes, "Well, then do it." And they're all like, "No." And Darwin being the he's like, "Well, I'll show you how to do it."
Yeah.
And so he went and did it. He's like, "I'll have a best-selling comic next year. What's wrong with you?" And then he went and did Ego.
Yeah.
Straight out of, in his spare time. And then had this whole other career. So he was just a force of nature.
He appeared like an atom bomb. That book came out, and everyone was like, there was that feeling of simultaneously, where the fuck did this guy come from? Yeah. And it looked like he'd always been around.
Right.
Yeah. It was
amazing.
Both. It was both.
So there was also,
he was a brand new expert, older than me.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like,
but I mean, I'll admit, I reacted to the first artwork I saw and sort of sloughed it off a little bit as, he's a Tim knockoff.
Right.
At the beginning, a little bit, right?
Because that was the language he was using.
And that's what he was responding to.
Sure. Exactly.
It reminded him of what
and it made
he
perfect
liked.
sense.
Exactly.
Because he was anything but, because his storytelling was like already so formed.
Yeah.
But I had an immediate sort of like, to that when I first saw it. But then you get into his work.
Oh, and then, I mean, just everything that comes out afterwards, right? Like,
what was the order of the books that came out? Like, it was...
So he did Ego, and then he did Catwoman.
Yeah.
There's a few other ones in there. He did the Slam Bradley backups, which are great.
Right.
And are overlooked now.
Yeah.
But he basically revived an old DC character that no one had been using and did backups in Detective Comics that were literally pulp stuff, which was way ahead of him getting back to that at the end of his career.
But it wasn't a huge library stuff until he did New Frontier.
New Frontier. Right. And he was pushing that all that time.
But like to go from doing a couple hundred pages and then doing 400-page plus,
and how many characters?
With
and
the entire
to
universe
do a
that
seminal
he's writing
work.
and drawing.
Yeah. To do a seminal work as like your third thing.
For them to even give him the reins is
pretty
insane.
Much.
Like it's.
And that's why. So I had actually not really read a lot of his stuff when New Frontier came out. Yeah. And so when I saw it, I was like, that Bruce Timm knockoff. But it was like, how the fuck did he get this?
Yeah. I know. He pushed
And that's when I went back to look at everything else.
But when you spoke
Darwin
to Darwin,
could be a very convincing human.
When you spoke to Darwin, that was what was so incredible about was, even though he was new in the business, he'd walk into a room and he had that power of personality, and there's those people where you feel very comfortable. He says, "I got this," or "We're going to do it this way," and you're like, "Well, he clearly has this shit figured out." I'd put my money on that.
He makes bold choices. Like he clearly had a plan.
The very first thing he pitched to DC.
Publishers respond to that.
Having been someone that was working on the Warner Brothers animated Batman stuff, the first thing and Superman, the first thing he pitched to DC was New Frontier, and they went, "Kid, come on." So he came up with this other thing, Ego, and then he got the job drawing Catwoman for Ed Brubaker's run, and then Cameron took over after, I think, and and he kept, and he started, but here's the thing, he just believed, it was this great sense of self-belief that he's just like, well, eventually they're going to ask me what I want to do, and it's going to be this thing I pitched them the first time. Yeah. So every time they said, what do you want to do next? And he's like, New Frontier, and they're like, no, dude, that's crazy, like, you're insane. No one, how about Catwoman? He's like, well, for now. And then and then it'd be like, everyone loves it, we're getting letters, what do you want to do next? New Frontier. And they'd be like, dude, this is ridiculous. What are you talking about?
Get it out of your head.
And even when they finally let him do it, they didn't want to promote it. So out of his own pocket, he did that whole thing with Stone and Manali and...
what's this?
He bought his own booth at San Diego Comic-Con. A corner that he dressed up like a military. He had like half a plane and he had nets and all like Stone was dressed as like a army cadet and he had out of his own pocket. And he didn't ask DC for a dime. He just said, no, I know if you push it, it's gonna make it happen. And he did it himself.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's amazing.
You know, it's so weird because I've seen people over the years who have tremendous ego and don't have any of the ability to back it up. And it's the most embarrassing, awkward thing where they will tell you, it's going to be like this and I've got a million crazy ideas. And you're just like, oh God. And you just watch them face plant so unbearably hard. And their ego is a weird force field. But there are those people who, I mean, money where your mouth is. Like he wouldn't say anything he couldn't do. And that was what was so phenomenal about it. It was just watching him charge in and sort of go, okay, it's going to be this. And you were like, and watch out, you know, and then it would happen.
Well, so like the Parker books shouldn't have existed.
No, that's right.
It wouldn't have.
Anybody else
no
would
one
have
else
been able to
would have
make
made
those.
that a successful.
Sure.
Yeah,
And he had a personal relationship with the estate.
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
I mean, it's not a book that would appeal to me unless it was him.
Right?
yeah,
Right.
of course, yeah.
His name dragged so many people to it just to be fascinated, you know, to see his approach.
It's great.
On it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
great.
wonderful.
Yeah. So do you know anything about when he did go back? So when they did the New Frontier movie,
Right.
because he was involved. I don't know how much.
All I know is that when TUTENSTEIN was getting made, or not getting made, we were in development hell and we were looking for a director. I called him, of course, and just said, so Darwin, do you want to help me out here? Like, we're struggling with this. We finally nailed the designs, but like the script, I've written 6 scripts here, like, and we're just struggling with it. Do you want to come on and director? And he was like, no, absolutely not. And it was actually the best advice, and he was probably right. No offense to the TUTENSTEIN crew, because it was, you know, it's all good. But he's just like, that's the last thing I want to see you do. He said, I'm not going to be part of this. I'm not going to be part of your adventure here. He's like, I want to see you making personal work. Selfish as that is, I appreciate you have kids at home and you want to do this thing. And he's like, I don't want any part of it. This is a nightmare. You're going to hate it. It's going to ruin your family, which it did. You're going to hate the travel, which it did. You're going to hate everything about it. It's not you. And of course, at the time, I told him to fuck off. You know, we had another one of our fights about it, but he was 100% correct. It was not necessary. Ultimately, they're right. Maybe he was wrong, actually.
Right.
But he was right about how hard it was going to be and how naive.
Whether
I
it
was
was
being.
worth it for you, maybe he didn't know, but he was correct on
Right.
the outcome.
Right. In the
of it.
short term,
Yeah,
100% correct. In the long term, nah.
He was always sort of like the goalpost for quality, and he was kind of like the high watermark for like not compromising on what you know is the correct path for a creative project.
But it's high risk, high reward.
Sure.
And
he took it a lot more personal than I do. Certainly.
Fire and brimstone. And
Yeah.
he pushed a lot of things through to make them happen. But he also had a bunch of stuff blow up. And when they blew up, they blew up dramatically.
Yeah.
And he had huge blowout fights with some of the powers that be
Yeah.
over and over and over again.
Legit
and then he'd
poured
come
a beer
around,
on a man.
and then he'd come around and win awards. And to him, you know, that was sort of like, well,
Yeah.
the ends justify the means. And it's like, as a matter of course, it worked for him, but it's not something that I would necessarily point to everyone and say,
That wasn't why he was successful.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
It
agree.
happened to be his personality.
Yeah.
But
It was a side effect of his determination and self-belief.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
he,
it wasn't always appealing.
Oh, if you were on the wrong side of it, it was terrifying.
he's like a
We all were
true
once in a while.
50s man.
Yeah.
He was.
He
That's
was
what
like
he
a line in the
aspired to,
sand,
and that's what he
sort
was,
of like gentleman.
But strangely not affected. He was like genuinely
so this
a
is the thing.
Hemingway type.
So that's
Like,
the-
it wasn't pretend.
Because
it just was made
how many
that way.
douchebags are there walking around out there with a fucking fedora?
Right.
You know,
Right.
who would love to be all of that.
Yeah.
And they'll never be that.
Sure.
Whereas this guy was just like, you get the impression he just chewed raw meat constantly.
Pretty much.
And yeah, like it's just that's and it seemed real.
Roll up a jerky and smoke it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like if I put on the same clothes, I'd look like a complete wank.
But fashion is about confidence, right?
Right. Sure.
Sometimes.
Usually.
So do you know anything about when they did the New Frontier movie? Do you have any
About how involved he was?
Yeah.
I know that he still had good relationships at Warner. I mean, he and Bruce remained friends, and he and a lot of those guys remained friends. So I'm sure it was very easy for him to slip back into one of those projects, but for him to return to animation in any kind of that was his baby. So of course he would work on that, and I'm sure everyone deferred. Yeah. I mean, it was his old crew.
Yeah.
I'm sure. We never talked about it afterwards, but I'm sure it was a delight, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just curious because it's going like that's moving through those worlds. I mean, that's an exception. That is an utter exception.
Well, it's interesting that he did animation in the middle,
right?
Coming from non-comics animation at all, as far as I know. I mean, he may have. I don't even think he did it all. He was a designer.
Yeah.
He's a designer who got into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, so I'm going to jump back over to you again because in doing some of this, I went back and I watched some stuff. I watched some old Jetcat.
Yeah.
Which I look at, and it's strange. When it came out, I loved it.
Yeah, and now you think it's crap?
No. I just see.
It is a long time ago now.
It is a long time, and it just feels dated.
Yeah.
It feels dated when it's like when you were, because there was a type of animation being done at the time.
Definitely.
And it feels, and it's in the storyboards, it's in a lot of the way it comes together. And I look at that and I'm like, that project, if it were being served today with the way like shows like Steven Universe get made and things like that, would fit that book, I
mean, don't forget, we didn't have a budget. That was part of an anthology show on, I mean, back when Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon were doing shorts programs, I mean, don't you wish we just had
that's how we sold a couple things way back then.
Yeah.
Kablam was what that was on Kablam?
That was Kablam, so that came after Cartoons.
And there was Cartoon Sushi.
Cartoon
I sold
Sushi.
stuff to them.
Great shows. But, I mean, these are micro budgets.
Yeah.
So literally, I mean, it was me doing breakdowns, like literally drawing out what would be considered like an extreme storyboard.
Yeah.
Like keyframes. And then Rafael Rosado, a great friend of mine, a great cartoonist in his own right, great comic book artist as well, who studied under Jeff, the creator of Bone, why am I blanking? Jeff Smith at, what was his animation studio called before he started? Yeah, so he started in
Cartoon Books and
Cartoon Books, and then before that, anyway, Jeff had an animation studio in Ohio, and Raphael came out of that studio, and great guy. So we were the only artists that touched it.
Really?
Up until it was animated, and then I think the color designer for the backgrounds was Scott. What was his name? He did like Magic Pickle. He was a comic book artist for a while. Scott Morris. It was Scott Morris.
Oh,
interesting.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, this is a million years ago.
Yeah.
It was
crazy.
The three of us are the only artists on that.
Wow.
And then I co-wrote it with Fred Schaefer, that producer I was bragging about. That's it. Cool. Like it's four of us. So
that's outstanding.
Really small budget.
Yeah.
You know? And
well,
then,
I do web stuff. So
yeah.
I
So
know small budgets.
it's but yes, it looks totally dated, and I mean the source material is a lot weirder. So it could have gone a lot weirder, but I'm pretty happy with it.
No, and don't get me wrong. Like when I first saw it, I was like jealous as fuck because it was cool and it was what it should be and it's only looking back with looking back at it now that you really do see the era of animation production totally all over it.
It's it's 90s. Like it's like so 90s.
Yeah. So I'm also going to ask you then, TUTENSTEIN.
Yeah.
Because I knew it from the book, and I knew it purely as just a fan.
Yeah,
the finished product is a very different animal.
Completely different animal. It's hard to talk about without on camera.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. That's fair.
What I will say, and they no longer technically exist, but Discovery Kids was starting to expand from documentary stuff, educational stuff, for the first time into animation. So they were looking for stuff that was incidentally educational, but that was animated. They, without naming any names, they did not know what they were doing. So they were doing things like approving a board, approving an animatic, getting the final animation, and then saying, yeah, could you just run that scene a little longer? Like, we'd like to see a little more of that.
That stuff still happens.
Yeah. So they didn't, you know,
It's a little easier with digital.
there's not...
It's not that much easier.
I'm not saying that you want ever to happen.
There's not extra footage of the scene. We
Yeah.
drew it to spec to the timing that you approved. You know, so it just was, so it was that kind of attention to detail
in animation
from the beginning all the way through. So it went through a lot of changes. That was, I mean, we were technically in development hell for a good few years.
Yeah. So even the design work on it, like because the final characters.
I love the final design work.
Yeah?
It's great stuff.
How much of that was you?
Very little. Well, approval was all me.
Yeah.
So, you know, steering it towards the right design.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was still very involved, but Tom's gonna be so mad at me. But Tom Perkins was one of the main designers.
Okay.
But his mentor, Tom, you're gonna kill me. What was his name? He's an Australian designer who did the final TUT design. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Love it.
it's
way
much more complex.
detail than I would ever throw into
much more
anything.
complex than your work.
But as we, but this was interesting. This was my learning curve for playing in the sandbox.
Yeah.
You know, so we this is that show that goes that, you know, you lose a little bit of control over and you go, well, how much do I care and how much don't I? You know, my version exists already, so let's see. You know, are they right or are they wrong? Well, what's your problem with the design? Well, we think we could go into darker places with it and your design's too cute. Okay, well, that's actually a good note. You know, oh, okay. Well, let's see some darker designs. And you see through and you're like, ugh, this is garbage. You know, so I just learned how to do this through TUTENSTEIN in a different way. JetCat was such a small cadre that it was so easy. It was just, it went straight through. TUTENSTEIN was the many voices. And it was great, actually, ultimately. I mean, I had my moments for sure where I was like going to walk away. And but it actually was a great learning curve to take those notes and go, well, yeah, this could be like that. You know, because there was a version where he was going to go to school. You know, and that's the one that I went, no fucking way. That's a terrible idea. No. You know, I'm glad. So we ended up, he's still in the museum. I mean, honestly, all of the key points of that show are still mine. They're still from the original Bible. That Cleo's still the one that accidentally wakes him up, that there's a talking cat, that, you know, he thinks he's an emperor, but he's really only king of the museum. You know, all those, again, is it 50% as good as you wanted it to be?
Right.
Yes, it is. And we had a float in the Macy's parade, and I'm really happy about it. You know?
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but it was painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been the hired gun for the last little while.
Yeah, I guess so.
You've been doing stuff for Marvel.
Yeah.
But you always want to tell your own stories.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like I'm not, though. Like, I understand that these aren't my characters, but you're
fully invested.
I can get into anything. Like, I can find the fun in drawing almost anything, and people hire me because they want me to draw it my way.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're really corralling me into something I don't want to do. I get jobs because it's full of monsters and they want someone to shoot the lights out. Like, those are the stories I get.
Yeah.
So I have fun. I can't remember a story that someone's given me that wasn't a good fit for me. Yeah. There's been a couple that I've turned down that I wasn't into. Yeah. But it's usually editors, it's in their best interest to find a good fit.
Yeah, and you're a distinctive artist.
Yeah, more and more I try and be a specific thing, and that helps guide people's decisions a lot too. Yeah. Like you tell the world what they can make of you. The more bold you are with that, the more people will understand what you should be doing anyway.
That's what's so great about comics, though, is that you could do, if you really wanted to, let's say you weren't happy with what you were doing, you could do your own one-shot or webcomic thing.
Just turn myself
sort of
inside out.
Yourself.
Yeah.
So, like, I was doing sword and sorcery stuff. Skullkickers came out, and it was like, Jim's the fantasy guy. And so I did Pathfinder, and I did the Conan Red Sonja stuff, and I do Dungeons and Dragons still to this day, and I did Figment and Samurai Jack, and it was like, Jim is the fantasy guy. It's got a dragon in it, throw it to Zub. Like, that was the way it was going. And I was a little nervous that I was so, you know, good on me. I'm not like, oh, woe is me. It's great. People are
Niche
calling me
isn't
out.
bad,
But I was still hitting a point where I was like, okay, I feel like I'm kind of wearing a pretty impressive hole here. And so doing Wayward, both in terms of my passions, I really want to do this, but it was like a character ensemble piece, and it's like dramatic, and it's still got some of my like action and kind of witty
It's
stuff.
still humor. It's
got dark bits, and
Sure.
it's teenage drama, and it's a team book in a way I really hadn't done.
when you showed me the first materials for that, you just
so
the
different.
art.
and
The
you
art
just
changed,
knew that it was
changes
going to
the
do
tone pretty dramatically.
Right, and now Glitterbomb, I did this like no nonsense horror book.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, I didn't know you had that in you, and it was like, great. Like
Yeah.
I'm excited that you didn't
Thank
know
you.
that I'm that angry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, great. And now it's opened up possibilities where I don't feel like I'm pigeonholed. I can sort of say, you know, we joked around when Glitterbomb was coming out, we were going to say the writer of Disney's Figment, you know, like, because I've done this kids, like all ages material, and then I've done this thing which my mother can't read because there's so much violence and swearing and anger and all this stuff. Yeah. But it's nice to have that range and to be able to show people, look, I can hit the mark. I know I can cover a range, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about comics is you could reinvent
Yeah, I
yourself.
don't feel cornered at all. Like style-wise, I feel like even without really talking to anyone about it, I can start handing in pages that are kind of like they've not seen this from me before, and as long as it's good, they'll still be happy with it.
Yeah, as long as the issue's consistent.
Yeah. Like I'm not doing like blood splatter on a Hello Kitty cartoon or something. Like it's always to the story.
Sure.
But if I have some style choice that I think is going to push it over the top, I just do it, and it's always worked out.
Yeah.
Right.
Like there's very little consequences on that side of it for me.
So when do you take the next step?
Well, right now, we're all of us at the studio are doing. We're doing an anthology together of short stories. Rossi's in it. We'll all be writing and drawing creator-owned content. And as a group, we want to sort of move forward as being more independent of our clients. Like I love being part of Marvel books, but I want to be my own thing that also does Marvel books. You know what I mean? And as you're saying, with changing your style, changing choices, and creative direction in general, it does open up. You feel more free when it's from the ground up. You're writing and drawing something. Because often you don't even can't quite verbalize it.
Sure.
And especially if you're drawing the thing that you're the storytelling is fundamentally starts as images for me.
Right.
To describe the tone of something is without the drawings yet is a bit abstract.
Right.
Like it's kind of impossible. And I
feel
don't
like
want to have
writers
to
have got
explain
such
myself.
an advantage there because I can do multiple books in a month,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So I can have my hands in both camps simultaneously. I can write Uncanny Avengers while Wayward's coming out. I can be working on Glitterbomb while I'm working on other projects. And it's like, this little maelstrom of artwork always coming in from all these collaborators. And I feel so fortunate that I've been able to build that slowly, carefully, and that it's working,
But I would have said, I don't think SpongeBob would have been the hit it was if it wasn't straight to board.
No, for sure.
And there's a certain charm about writing the stuff or drawing the stuff you're writing the stuff you're drawing, is that to try to describe those kinds of gags
particularly
would have been
animation, I think.
a waste of time,
Yeah.
And
right?
like moments
it's a
of
waste
action,
of time.
moments of
silly
staging, stuff like that.
Right.
It's kind of coming in like spontaneously.
Picture's worth 1,000 words sometimes.
Yeah.
Not always.
Oh, for
There's-
sure.
But
there's a give and
sometimes
take, for
it's
sure.
like,
I
well, I
agree.
can't describe this nuance. Here, look.
I've done
this.
thumbnails for sure, and that's been one of the advantages.
Yeah.
Coming from the art background and being able to write and give feedback to a visual artist, talk to them about the visuals in a way that's cohesive instead of just I don't like it, or make it 10%
Because you had that
more
experience.
exciting or whatever.
Yeah.
Being able to say this, Andy Suriano was drawing the Samurai Jack comic that we did together. He helped design the show. He's a brilliant artist, 10 times the artist that I am. He's designing at Disney on the Mickey Mouse shorts and all this stuff. And there was a really weird sequence that we were doing in the comic, and I was trying to describe it in the script, and it was not working. And he read it, and it and he was just like, I kind of get what you're going for, and I thumbnailed it out, and I must have apologized 20 times because I'm like, Andy, you're so much better than art than I am. but this is what I meant. And he just goes, oh yeah, no problem.
Right.
And then boom, it all just happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes.
we get the same experience in the voice booth when you're voice directing. And it's something I've learned because I came to voice directing really late. And I found out that actors don't like it when you just give them a line read. You just read the line to them and say, do it like that.
Right.
Yeah, they hate it. But sometimes it's the quickest route to it.
Sure.
You know, like it's like, do it like this. And I've been fortunate enough that I've worked with some really, really excellent and understanding voice actors that way who are, like I've learned to like describe.
Right.
And there's one or two of them that just like, I don't have to tell them anything. They just go and they do it.
Sure.
Like I mean, honestly, Paul Amos on the Captain Canuck stuff.
Yeah.
Paul is, I mean, he's got that ability to just be that Captain Jack Sparrow kind of a villain.
Right.
That is just, I mean, like he gives it to me 10 ways and they're all amazing.
I did voice directing for Rob Paulson. We did this series of shorts for this thing for Namco Bandai called Bravo Man. And he did these shorts and he came walking in the door and he was so brilliant. And we would just ask him for a delivery and we had set out this block of time and I had never voice directed before. And the first little chunk, he could have gone as fast as we needed, but I was the one that was slowing everything down because I was worried like, well, what if we only have one take? Even though it was perfect.
Yeah.
And so we would go through, we started to fall behind schedule. And then I was like, oh God. And he goes, you're overthinking it. And I'm like, you're right, I am. And he goes, we got this. I'm like, you've got this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold on to the reins and
Yeah.
just sort of, fly with you. And he was so good. And by the end, we ended up finishing the session 45 minutes ahead of schedule. And at lunchtime, we were like over an hour behind schedule. Like it was that impressive. We just kicked into gear and got it. He did a song at one point, and he had one of the guys that did some of the most iconic songs for the Animaniacs had come in to do this song with him.
Yeah.
And we had blocked out like an hour and a half, and they did it in 40 minutes. And we were just like, what was that? Like it was wild. They were so good at what they did. Yeah, I mean, worth their weight in gold.
Sometimes it is just that like,
Yeah.
I need to just show you.
Yeah.
Because I can't, whatever it is that I'm hitting a wall trying to explain
Yeah.
it. And if you're working with the right contributor, like they understand that.
Oh, sure.
And if you've got the ability to do it. There are some people I've seen in the voice booth as well who, no matter what, like they try to give you the line and the director themselves, they can't do it. Like they can't communicate it that way either. So then where are you? You know, it's tough. It's tough, but it's the same thing. If you can show once in a while.
One of the shows I did layout on, the boards were really, really, really funny. And all of us in the studio were like, man, this show's going to be great. And then we got the animatic back with all the voices, and the voice acting just killed every joke. The timing was terrible.
Yeah.
The delivery was wrong. Like, we all looked at each other, we're like, what happened? This funny show is just a turgid mess now. It's terrible.
Let's underground publish the boards.
Yeah, and it just slew us. The morale just dumped right out on the show. We were so excited until we got those back, and then we went, oh, it's just gonna go out there and be another crappy kids cartoon. You know?
Yeah.
So demoralizing.
So you're venturing back into animation. As a guy who has the basis of your career is in it. The foundation for all your stability is in animation.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, the teaching side of that.
Yeah, sure.
And then you've moved into writing, and that's bringing you back to animation with this stuff that's happening in overseas.
Yeah, I'm not going to be. It's weird because we're working with a Japanese studio.
Yeah.
And so at some point,
So do they give a shit that you have any background in animation at all?
I don't know yet. It's that preliminary at this point. So I'm fascinated to see how much or how little influence I will get. I'm not a producer on the show, so I don't get to make those final decisions. But everyone involved seems very key on having me, explain elements to them and broaden their understanding of why we did certain things in the comic and ways we can do it differently in the animation to hopefully play to the strengths of the medium. And when I talk about that stuff, they're utterly, so far they've been, just wonderful. Like they're like, oh, hey, this stuff. Great, you're really thinking about this stuff. You're not being like so precious about it that you're like, every line must be the same, every angle must be the same. Like,
you got to prove that you can play ball.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated as well because it's being done in Japan that there's going to be, even though the story is set in Japan, they're going to bring their own sensibilities to it. They're going to bring their own knowledge and elements to it. And they're going to, ostensibly, anime is a global audience, but there's still certain Japanese elements that get injected into that process. You know what I mean? And I'm fascinated to see what aspects they.
Is it going to freak you out if it's a more
prioritize.
authentic version?
I do, right? Like, it's going to
That
be
could be weird.
Because
Well,
that's
but
what you were going for,
yeah,
authenticity
but
that way.
Steven, the artist, lives over there. He lives in Yokohama.
No, I didn't.
So he's
Yeah.
going to be around the whole time. He's going to be involved, and he's going to be on hand a lot more. So it's going to be this weird thing where I've got to kind of let a little bit more of that go and just focus on the book
Yeah.
and take trips over there and be involved in broader ways,
Yeah.
promotional ways. I mean, it's going to be neat and scary and
Do you have any aspirations back in animation?
I mean, I would love to make more comics that get turned into animation.
But do you feel like you need to be involved in that?
I guess it would depend on the production.
Yeah.
Like Wayward, I feel like it's in good hands. You know, I would love to see Skullkickers get adapted into animation. I feel like it's got this Adult Swim, you know, shithead fantasy story I really would love to see animated because I think there's a lot. It has an animated feel. It wasn't my intent. I made it to make a comic, but I feel like it could work very well.
Yeah.
And I think I would be, just my love of sword and sorcery and fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons, I would probably get pretty attached.
Yeah.
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 And I would, you know, not that I don't, I am
But you
obviously
don't.
attached
But you don't
to
see
Wayward,
that. You don't see these things that you're making going back to animation as an opportunity for you to go back and maybe direct something.
I don't know. Maybe it's that weird thing. If the opportunity came up, then I would have to stare it in the face and really decide.
But it would have to be one of your own projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
The passion level would have to be high
Right,
enough to
right.
justify that kind of a
The
commitment.
nice thing with comics is the turnaround time. Like, you know, they announce a book and 4 months later it's on the stands.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're sending it to press and 3 weeks later I got the physical thing
Yeah.
in my
Yeah,
hand.
see,
So
This
similar
is-
to like so you, because you lost yourself, like what Darwin was saying to you that day
Years.
was you
Went down the animation rabbit hole
yeah.
for
So you
decades.
I mean,
People were wondering whatever happened to me.
It's
Yeah,
indulgent. And
because
everyone
something
even-
because if you did go and do that, how many comics would you not be making?
When you
Right.
talk to people in animation, they think, you know, comics are magical because we can turn it around so fast. People in regular publishing, prose publishing, think we're nutballs too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They announce a prose book, and that means 16 months later it's going to come out.
Right.
You know, because the marketing arm and the editing and all this sort of stuff, and the book's done when they sign it. You know, they're soliciting a comic. I haven't written that comic yet. They're making the cover for it, and I wrote ad copy, and I'm like, yeah, it's going to be vaguely about this. And then I'm hammering down lines for Rogue and, you know, Quicksilver and all these characters, and it'll fit the template to a certain degree, but there's happy accidents all the time.
Yeah.
I put a cliffhanger in my latest script that I just handed in that was not in my outline, but I knew it was going to be, like, I was really excited about it. So I sent it in and immediately phoned them and sort of said, here's why I did all that. And they agreed to it, and I got this crazy thing in this book that's coming out in, you know, less than 3 months.
Yeah.
But it's bonkers, you know? And so there's something very indulgent about comics. Even my friends that are doing graphic novels that are being published through real publishers, they'll finish their graphic novel and they have to wait that 12-month kind of turnaround for release.
Yeah.
And it drives them insane. One of my friends, she signed a book with First Second, amazing publisher, beautiful books.
Yep.
And she's like, yeah, 2019, it's coming out. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, you know,
Like a real book?
like, but 2019, like, you know,
So far away.
it feels to me, once you get, it's almost like a drug, like this thing of, I wrote it, it comes out, people respond to it, they like it, or they hate it, on to the next thing.
It's kind of street level.
Yeah. It is, it does feel very DIY, you know, or DIY,
So you, I mean, you're very fulfilled in your comics work, and you've been fortunate enough that you've been fairly fulfilled in what you're doing in animation, because you tend to get hired for what you do. You've had a couple things that I know haven't been exactly that. You've had a taste of like doing someone else's stuff and trying to
The
fit
commercial
yourself into that.
mercenary.
I
Yeah.
think comics I want to do more, and I think I'm just starting though. I'm still pretty much a newbie in comics, so I want to do much more.
I think, well, I would be heartbroken if you stopped drawing comics, but
Yeah.
the why I love animation and why I left animation is kind of the same thing. Like, I don't there was so much to take from it, so much to learn, and it was like a dense spot to get as much information about drawing and storytelling as I could from all these different sources. But the gravity of it can be really heavy, and I didn't want to be someone who was just drawing someone else's stories.
It's not enough. You want to do more.
For I think your ambitions, what are my ambitions for your ambitions?
Wow.
The guru and the goon all at the same
I think
time.
it's great to work in animation, because I don't think I would have been a professional artist right now if I didn't have these entry-level animation jobs to break myself over. I wasn't going to make it in comic books as a 24-year-old. I was nowhere near good enough, so I had to fill the gap drawing somehow, and animation has that work.
So much drawing.
And it's it's not pretty usually, but you don't deserve pretty yet. Like, you're not good enough for pretty.
It's great training. You're consistently drawing. You have to meet those deadlines, and the criticism comes in. But that's why, like at work, I will doodle something else. Like, what's that for? I was like, oh, it's just me. And they're like, when do you have the time to do this and this? I was like, you do fall on the spectrum of you just draw that one show style. And I've known so many artists that can't draw anything else but that. I'm like,
or artists that get into computer animation and they never draw.
They don't draw traditional, and I have to keep the balance. Like sometimes I'll draw digitally for a while. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back to ink and ink washes. Like my next personal project that I have in the like run-ins of, I really want to develop, and I want to do like ink washes, traditional. And this has got to be much better. This is going to be the book that makes me millions. That's the goal. That's my ambition. The next book I do is going to be like, whoa, you were shit before, but this is so much better. I'm like, yeah, that's the goal. But animation, definitely, they're both helping me in both spectrums to be much better.
But your heart's in comics.
I think it is.
Yeah,
I love
it. It's fair to say. And it's okay to say that.
I know, animation, I still freaking love it, and I love that what I'm doing. I have the best job in animation.
And you are young. It's all ahead of you right now.
It all changes and grows,
yeah.
Here's the weird thing when things come around in those cycles, right? So, when I was going to school for animation, that idea of, I want to be a Disney animator, because there's that sense of both the
that was the top position.
The top position.
That meant you were
never
the best.
You were some of the best artists you could be. That your work was being put on a stage of global recognition of art. And
your grandparents
There's no one
knew.
you could say that to that wouldn't be impressed.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that was that idea of being a
approval.
Disney animator, being a Disney animator. And so you work at it. It doesn't end up being in the cards for you. I work on a ton of different things. I find myself in all these different places. And then in the weirdest turn of events, a few years ago, I get asked to do this Disney graphic novel project with the Imagineering team to bring back the Dreamfinder character from Epcot and define his origin. And I get to work with Felipe Andrade, who's this phenomenal artist, and we do this graphic novel. And it's an unexpected hit. The first issue goes through 3 or 4 printings. Each issue did 2 or 3 printings after that. The graphic novel has sold very, very well. They sell it in the gift shop at Disney World.
Yeah.
And
So you got to work at Disney.
Well, this is what was crazy.
Yeah.
But I got to be instead of going at Disney and being, an assistant and in between and all this thing, I get to come in at a level where I'm literally having conference calls with the Imagineering team, and we're building a story. And I realized that the original Journey into Imagination attraction has no narrative. It's this sensory kind of experience. So I'm like, well, there has to be conflict. So we need to make a villain. And they're like, well, there's no villain in the original ride. And I go, okay, we're going to make a Disney villain. So we generate a bunch of new characters, and they go through the design process, and we make Disney characters, and they're approved, and we do the story. And I got to work for Disney. I still have strong ties there, and we're doing more stuff because of comics. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, sure, I'm not a Disney animator working
if you were, if you had, you probably wouldn't have been.
They never would have asked me to pitch.
They never would have listened to your
ideas. If I was
ideas.
some guy in a back office
who had just worked his way up as an animator and a story assistant and all that shit.
So there's this weird thing where I have Disney fans that come to me who love this book, and they're like, "You brought this character back from obscurity," and
dude, I went on that ride.
So fulfilling to me to be a part of this thing. I went to D23 that summer. And I did a panel with Tony Baxter, Disney legend Imagineer, who designed a lot of the original rides at the park. And we signed each other's books like it was like a yearbook or something, And we went out to a roaring crowd mostly for him. Let's be honest. But then we did a signing that they had to cut off the line because there were so many people that wanted to get the book signed by us, and it was just like I had a Disney experience. I got this Disney project that
You actually had a better Disney.
right. Than
Yeah.
most
Because
people.
no animator
You
gets
got
to
the
go
fantasy.
out and
You
sign
got
a
the
copy
fantasy.
of the.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You know what I
and they
mean?
don't get associated with it. Their name doesn't.
I
The
don't even think
director
a
of
director
Frozen.
goes
Who's
out
the
and-
director of Frozen?
Yeah, I don't know.
No one remembers their name.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who's the director of Big Hero 6?
So I would challenge that some of that is
Right?
changing because I mean
No,
so-
they have fame within the animation circles, but you ask someone on the street,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not saying you ask someone on the street who did the Figment graphic novel, but the difference is my name's on the front friggin' cover.
And that is
Right.
and that is something that's baked in. That's something that's so
the-
ridiculous in
one
terms
of
of
the
the
only
two
names
cultures.
on
Is that
Yeah. It's
like
not like
our credits go by so quickly at the end,
yeah.
and there's so many of us, and
Yeah.
that there is no like. I mean, I've sold shows in the past where it's like we try to like put the creator's name above the title.
Right.
Those are really important, and that's part of what. And that if I we're actually bringing this back around because that's what Startoon is about. Startoon is about having creators who are distinctly and uniquely tied to their creations.
There are very few animation creators that get that kind of.
Yeah.
Gendy Tartakovsky's.
And that's
One
what
of
and that's
those
what
guys.
happens in the
Yeah.
States at those creative
Kraken.
utopias. Those Cartoon Networks and Nickelodeons and even Disney itself now does more of that.
Yeah.
And that's what those shows are that sell today.
Yes.
And there's a void in Canada for exactly that in animation.
Right.
And so that's why Startoon for what has worked, because there are people out there who want to have a voice in the animation world. There are people, and it's why you left.
Yeah.
Because there's no place for it.
That's
And we're
If you could go
and-
straight to board, if you could make
Right.
it
yeah,
your own
and
voice,
the
would-
few of them that
might
there have
change
been have
everything.
left to
Yeah,
go to
you
the
look
States.
at like someone like
Yeah.
Pendleton Ward, whose style can carry right through to
Very
the
good
final.
example.
Yeah.
Very good
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. So that's what that's essentially what we're trying to do here is try to create an outlet for it here. And I mean, and we've had some limited success in that even like out of our top 10 last year, you saw today the judges are largely broadcasters and that kind of thing. And so we had out of our top 10, half of them got a call because they now knew their name
Right.
and they knew
Yeah.
their work and those things were tied together.
Yeah.
And they got a call to work on something else maybe.
Yeah.
One
Or
of our-
if you ever
one
want
of
to
our
pitch something,
graduates-
come and see us.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of
One
thing.
of our graduates at Seneca, her final film that she did with a small crew, they're in negotiations now to see it actually done as a pilot and all sorts of stuff like that. It's like, I think the industry is hungry for those voices and distinct styles, and they want to find that next thing. You know what I mean? And I feel like,
Because it has worked elsewhere,
yes, finally.
we here in Canada are looking for it.
Right. Rebecca
and-
Sugar and
Yeah.
everyone else. Like that having a creative voice is not something to be afraid of. It's something to propel.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
A contest is a great way to do a shorts program.
It's worked before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love it.
Cartoon Network. They launched their entire first generation.
Well, that was Hanna-Barbera with Dexter's Lab and all that stuff.
That's the that was the Cartoon Network. Yeah, that was the
Powerpuff
first.
Girls was
Yeah,
launched after
$10,000. We're going to buy it and give you a job.
Yeah.
And Johnny Bravo came out of that. Powerpuff Girls came out of that. Dexter's Lab came out of that.
Stupid Dogs.
Cow and Chicken.
Yeah.
All that stuff came out of that.
Wild.
And there's a whole other conversation we had as to why that works there, and we haven't been able to make it work.
I
Right.
believe that was Fred Seibert's first.
Yep.
foray
And now
outside
Fred's
of
coming to
MTV.
Canada.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So who knows? Who knows? So back to the round of the questions, because I am trying to actually wrap this to
What?
a certain degree. I know.
We're out of
it's
beer?
actually dark outside, which means it's very late. So you're pretty happy in the comics world,
I am.
and you're getting into telling your own stories right now. Do you see a day where there's some animation in your future?
I'd like the idea of it. Like my history in animation is such grunt level, no identity, no control. It was really just a job I could get.
Yeah.
Less
So-
guru, more goon.
Yeah, exactly. I was just working the door. But I do sort of have fantasies of coming back to it from a position of some higher station where people already respect my skills, and that's why they want to work with me. So I'm not executing someone else's idea. They want my take on something, or they want to take something I've made and created and try their version of it and work with me to develop that. Having said that, I still don't want a life without drawing.
Yeah.
So however I can manage that, if it doesn't involve me drawing stuff, I'm not going to give too much of my time to it.
Yeah.
You know, like a couple months or something like that as a, you know, a fun side career or something. I could see that happening, but then I have to get back to the job at hand.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you?
I'll probably always do both. I think, you know, for me at this point, I've always thought of myself as like the old school Disney story man. I don't think I'm a particularly great writer. I don't think I'm a particularly great artist. I'm an idea man. And when I get an idea and I start to follow it through and become obsessed with it, it's only after it starts to develop in my head that I decide whether it's better suited for print or film.
Yeah.
Sometimes one works better, or a finite graphic novel. Sometimes it's not serialized.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a story and you're like, this is a great idea. I wish it was 20 issues, but it's really just one.
Right.
You know, so I think I'm just following the story at this point. And whatever I come up with, if it works. But I will say that, of course, if it happens to work for print, that's easier to get made.
Yeah.
So those are the ones everyone's going to see, at least for the next little
Yeah,
while.
so that's like a personal focus for you? I mean...
Only, at this moment, but it doesn't mean I'm not still pitching stuff, and we'll see. Sometimes I have an idea that doesn't really make as much sense for print as it does. Like I can hear it already.
Yeah.
You know, you're just like, oh, it needs the sound. It really needs the movement.
So, because your work in the past was so split between like very cartoony and more realistic kind of stuff.
Still schizophrenic about that.
Sure, but is it that like in the past, would those cartoony ideas maybe not have seen print if were they really cartoons that you would have been pitching if you'd had the access? Or did you always have the access?
No, not necessarily.
No?
I mean, it's funny though because at the time that I was doing stuff like Oddville and Jet Cat and Land of Nod, those early things, there wasn't a lot of stuff like that yet.
Yeah.
Now you see a lot of like a broader market for not just kid stuff, but like cute, weird adult stuff. Mm-hmm. At the time, there wasn't a lot of stuff like that. So, but I was going off of, I mean, you know, it's all a continuum, right? So I remember seeing Raw magazine, which was like, you know, Charles Burns stuff and early Chris.
It was Art Spiegelman who was
Art Spiegelman.
That.
But the thing in it that really inspired me was Kim Deitch's Waldo stuff, because I really loved early animation. I was enamored with the Betty Boop cartoons and Felix the Cat and early Mickey Mouse. I really loved the old black and white stuff. I remember seeing old animation on Wonderful World of Disney, I think, at a young age.
Yeah.
The old
And
rubber hose
again,
stuff.
just like we were saying with like seeing those encyclopedias with comics, the idea that this went back further and there were secrets.
Yeah.
Older
just-
than your grandparents.
Right,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
fascinating. So to see somebody, an artist, a modern artist that was taking those tropes and reworking them was very inspiring. And Arn Saba's Neil the Horse, too, a Canadian artist that was very inspiring, too. So I don't think I was doing anything new necessarily, except I was, you know, playing that forward. I was going with that momentum and
We're
going,
all
I love
feeding
that
off our
stuff too.
influences, though.
Absolutely. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants every day. Yeah, I never separated. And I mean, I've also done a daily strip. I've done weekly strips. I've done, you know, so I just love all aspects of cartooning. So whatever door opens and then I'm ready for it, I'm up for anything.
But wouldn't it be great to have a new Jay Stevens graphic novel?
Oh, I wouldn't. Dude,
Wouldn't that be great?
I'm buying the old ones.
Eventually.
So yeah.
It's happening.
I'd be the first guy in line.
Nice.
Thanks.
So we solved everything. We solved comics
Yeah, it's
and
done.
animation.
We're set.
Woo.
We did.
Yeah.
Woo!
That was tough.
Oh.
Thank God we were here.
So on that note, so thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. Now, if any of you guys do want to give a shout out to your own social media, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, I don't do Twitter. I got the Instagram growing though, and I'm on Facebook, I suppose, but I treat it very badly. My Facebook audience.
He just slaps them
Instagram.
around.
Shabby. He's very
So
shabby
badly.
with it.
Calls
Yeah.
them names
I'm
and tells
ignoring
them
them
to go
for
away.
months on end.
They love it though. They come back for more.
That's right.
That's
true.
the whole point. Bad treatment.
Where are they finding you?
Instagram. I think it's just Rossi Gifford. It's pretty
Rossi
simple.
Gifford?
Maybe. I don't even
I think
know.
it's Rossi Gifford.
I think it's
we
Rossi
mentioned this before.
Gifford. Yeah.
Yeah. And you, sir?
I want you to pimp your stuff.
This is my stuff.
Oh, I know. Oh, okay. You can find me at jimzub.com. So
I think you just have to turn on the internet and find you.
Yes, jimzub.com.
It's just his face.
And there's all the typical like articles, order my books and interviews, but there's also about 40 different articles about how to break into comics, write comics, the economics of creator-owned comics, and how I fucked up so you won't have to.
Excellent.
And then I'm on Twitter at Jim Zub, and
He gives and he gives and he gives. This
and
guy.
can't shut up.
Vindication.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, thank you guys.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Right on.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.